Step into an enchanting holiday world in Fort Worth, Texas. On today's episode of Homeworthy, we'll meet Leben Riebe, who has transformed his home into a winter wonderland. He has thousands of vintage ornaments covering his tree. He begins decorating in November, and today he'll give us a tour of every corner of his home brimming with cheer. As a vintage holiday decor curator, Leben has an amazing talent for infusing every space with nostalgia and spirit. Enjoy!
Hi Homeworthy, I'm Leben. Welcome to my home in Fort Worth, Texas. Come on in.
This holiday season, get ready to unwrap the most magnificent holiday homes with Homeworthy's 25 Days of Christmas. For the month of December, we'll take you inside the most heartwarming houses, decked out for the holidays in true festive fashion. From twinkling lights and elegantly trimmed trees to sparkling ornaments and cozy holiday charm, these homes capture the warmth, wonder, and beauty that make this season so special. So join us as Homeworthy celebrates 25 Days of Christmas. The magic starts now.
Raise your glass. Cheers! Merry Christmas! Happy holidays!
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
I'm Leben Riebe, founder of Vintage Holiday. I offer a curated selection of holiday items, and welcome to my home in Fort Worth, Texas. I can't wait to show you around. This home was built in 1940, and I have been living here since 2019. And the style is just pretty classic of the time period, pretty minimal for that time period. The house was in good condition when I bought it. It's been renovated over the years. And so I really haven't done a lot to the house other than paint, wallpaper, and decorating. So I typically start decorating November 1st or right after Halloween. And I'd spend the month of November decorating. So I always start with my vintage putz village on my mantle. It's something that I can get done in one day and it doesn't make a huge mess. So it is the first thing that I do. It's my favorite piece of decor that I do for the holidays. So it always kind of gets me motivated to then get everything else out and get going. I start usually with garlands and wreaths. I use all artificial inside just so that I can start earlier. And so I get all my garlands hung in place without decorating them yet. And then after that, I set up the trees. And then that's when I start to, once all of that kind of foundational layer is done, that's when I start to then bring out all of the ornaments and start putting things on the garlands, on the wreaths and the trees, etc. So it takes me all of November, but it happens in stages, or I do a little bit each day. I like to get it done by Thanksgiving though. All right, welcome to my living room. So this is a little passageway between the front door and the rest of the house. So here I have a little desk that I just think is super cute and adorable. And I've just put it behind the sofa here, and I've styled it with some hurricanes and some amaryllis bulbs and little apples. Over here I have an antique hall tree, and we just hang coats and scarves, and have a little bar cart here. I kind of just like to add little things. They don't all have to be vintage, so these are newer, and I've added these little bows. I liked the way these wreaths looked on the plates. I actually sell these wreaths on my website, so a little trio of boxwood dried wreaths. And if we come along this way, I like to use bulbs like paper whites, amaryllis for the holidays. I just think that that's a really nice touch. So these are little brass squirrels, were my grandmother's. So I've tucked these into the little pots here. I just thought that was a fun little touch. I found this antique clock. It was $25 and I just had to have it. I like to use just old things that I find at antique shops. I found this painting. I love the frame. I love the painting. It has some flaws, but I like it that way. I almost buy nothing new. So almost everything that I have is pre-owned, antique, vintage. Including all the furniture. I only have a couple of pieces of new furniture. For the living room, I have used mostly red, so red ribbons. I just think this dark red looks nice against the green and with all the dark colors in the room. With my fireplace, I decorate the mantle with my vintage putz houses each year, and I like to change them up. I can fit about 9 on here, and I love these little lamp posts. They're just so cute. And people ask me how I light it all the time, and I've kind of created my own custom electrical system for it that's all hidden by the trees and the snow. I made these trees a couple of years ago, and then these are bottle brush trees. I add these little old, I think they're called lead flats. They were made in Germany, and they're just the perfect scale for these little houses. These houses were made in Japan in 1920 and 1930. And putz houses were also made in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, but they were a lot smaller. These are kind of elaborate, detailed versions, and I just fell in love with them. I saw a collector who did a village like this. She has the most incredible houses, and I just had to recreate something like it. So I started collecting them, I think in 2017, and I've built a pretty good collection, and I like to switch them out each year, but I have my favorites. Like I love this church. I think this church is just fantastic, and that Santa on it is original to that church. There's also a little original Santa here. This little snowman. They're just fun and quirky, and I would like to live in this little village, I think. And then on either side, I always put these blow mold toy soldiers on either side of the fireplace. They're really the only blow molds that I use in my decorating, but I just think that they're really cute. And I kind of like to have a bit of kitsch mixed in. So I love to use this old tinsel. So this is old metal tinsel. They don't make it anymore, and I've collected it. People would save it year to year, and so I've collected a good amount of it to use on my trees. And this year for this tree, this is a live tree. It's the only live tree I do in the house. I really wanted to keep this a bit more monochromatic. In keeping with the theme of this room, I wanted this room to be just a bit more red and green and simple, but then obviously I've covered it in tinsel. I was not intending to use the tinsel on this tree, but it felt like it needed something, and so I started to put a little bit of tinsel on, and then with tinsel, I can never just do a little bit. I think I'm gonna just do a touch of tinsel around, and then I end up just layering and layering and layering until it's just dripping. So I rarely just do something all at once, so I usually work on things over a couple of days, kind of put a little bit on, assess, put a little bit more on, assess. So I would say this probably took me 2 hours total to put the tinsel on. So this tree topper I bought this year, I wanted something just white and bright for the top. And it's just a plastic tree topper that I got on Amazon, but it was a little simple, so I covered it in glass glitter, German glass glitter, to give it a little bit of a sparkle. And I think it turned out really good. I like it, I'm happy with it. I have different wrapping paper for all 3 trees this year. So this year in here, I can only fit a few presents underneath here. So I did red and gold underneath this tree. And then when we get to the other rooms, there's different themes for those rooms. But yeah, I just kept it simple in here. This garland, it's faux garland. For several years, I would only use real garland, real trees, but it's difficult to do that when you decorate early, and they dry out and they become a fire hazard. They get sap on your walls. So I switched to artificial garland a couple of years ago, and It's pretty realistic looking. I mean, so realistic looking that you really can't tell that unless you're feeling it or looking at it super up close. But I had these custom made, and yeah, I've really enjoyed using the artificial garland. It just makes things a lot easier. The only real live, other than the flowers, you know, is this tree. This tree is the only real greenery that I've used. Everything else is artificial or preserved. I sometimes decorate these garlands, but I just didn't this year. I played around with several different ideas and nothing really felt right. I really wanted this room to be a bit simpler, and sometimes I just don't decorate the garlands. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. So I left the garlands in the living room blank this year and just added white mini lights. So I have them on the fireplace here and around the doors leading to the dining room and the kitchen. It doesn't look like it probably, but I like to try to leave as many things that are just in the room, already in the room, and just layer Christmas on top of them. Now, obviously, like to put a tree here, I have to remove the table that's here. And I do remove some things, but for the most part, I just leave the room as is and layer Christmas on top. So I don't use decorative holiday pillows. I just leave what I already have. Except I do have one tiny one over here. I just loved this one. I thought this was so funny that I had to get it. So that's the only seasonal pillow I do have. I just thought that was fun and quite ominous, but I had to get that one. And over here, I just like to add some of these vintage ornaments and bowls around. I think that that's, you know, just sometimes the easiest little touches are fine and make a pretty big impact. So I collect vintage ornaments. That's probably my main collection, are vintage Christmas ornaments. And then I also collect vintage putz houses, specifically the older ones from 1920s, 1930s. They're a bit more elaborate. Those are the two main holiday collections that I have and that I focus on. I also collect a few other things, a few blow molds, some ceramic trees, just anything else that kind of catches my eye. But the bulk of my collection are ornaments and putz houses. When people come into my home for the holidays, I want them to feel taken back to a different time, maybe their childhood, maybe a special Christmas that they had. I want people to feel comfortable and warm and cozy and loved by the home. Gosh, I'm gonna cry. I guess I am pretty sentimental, especially about the holidays. So yeah, I just want people to feel good and positive, and they might feel a bit overwhelmed just because there's a lot going on. But yeah, that's what I hope people feel when they come into my home. Now we're from the living room heading into my dining room. This is where I really kind of up the vintage feel. This is where I use most of my vintage ornaments. So since this is part of kind of leading into the living room, I've kept these wreaths simple, which is these red ribbons to kind of reflect that room and that transition. But I've set the table with little ornaments and this vintage ceramic Christmas tree. My aunts all had these when I was growing up, and I thought they were so fun. So I thought this looked like almost like a Christmas tree cake. So I've put that in the middle of the table. I've hung little wreaths on the chairs. I don't know if you can see those. And then over here, I have decorated the garlands in the dining room with my vintage ornament collection. So I think that looks really nice, and to reflect the ornaments that are on the tree. And so this is my little vintage Santa mug collection. And one year, I really struggled with how to display them. And one year I set them on top of these Delft vases, which I have here year round. And I just thought it was really fun. And so I've been doing that ever since. And then I add these little vintage bottle brush trees as well to give them like a little hat vibe. I don't know. I think they're fun. So I don't know how many ornaments I have. I've never counted. I have a couple of thousand at least. I use probably 3/4, 2/3 or so in this room. I have some that I never get out because they're too precious to me to display, but I have sourced them all over. Estate sales, antique shops, eBay, Etsy, really just all over. And I haven't really bought any in the last couple of years because I have too many. And being in this old small home, there's not a lot of storage. So it kind of helps keep the collection under control. Also with my collections, I really like to display them. I know I just said I have ornaments in storage I don't use, but I really try to display everything that I collect. So I don't like to just collect just to have it in some storage building, you know, across town. I really want to use most of it if I can. So to attach these ornaments, I just use ornament hooks and I just hook them in. Thankfully, this garland is pretty, there's a lot of branching. So they're pretty secure. Actually, I decorated this garland with ornaments before I lit it with lights. I forgot to put lights in it. And I thought there's no way I'm gonna get lights in that garland and not knock off and break 5 or 6 ornaments. But I did, and not a single ornament fell off. So, and I mean, it's pretty secure. That's the way I've been doing it for several years now. I do the same thing with the garland over the kitchen arch, and just simple ornament hooks work. Yes, I love to give this guy a little festive bow tie for the holidays. Yeah, so I've wrapped gifts in marbled paper and I've put them underneath the sideboard here. They're similar to the ones that I have underneath the Christmas tree. I just thought it needed this kind of fullness here. I don't really put anything underneath here of interest outside of the holidays, so I felt like it needed this kind of overabundance of gifts here to kind of just add to this overabundance in this room. I made these crackers. These are called Christmas crackers. These don't actually crack. The ones you find in the store, you know, you pull on each end and it pops and toys come out. But I just liked the way this paper, I had this paper left over from wrapping gifts, and I felt like the place settings just needed something festive. And so I made these one night and added these to the table. And I thought that looked really nice. The tablecloth is a green toile that I purchased that online. It is new. So some things are new. A mix of vintage. So the plates are old, the silverware is old, these cups are old, these cups are new. Obviously the vintage Christmas things are older. So I like to mix mostly old with a little bit of new. I think keeps it a bit fresh. This is my dining room tree. This is where the bulk of my ornament collection goes. This is the tree that I sell on my website. I have struggled for several years to find a really good artificial tree, and I used to use real trees only, but with this many ornaments, it's really difficult with a real tree to keep the branches from, you know, drooping significantly. And in fact, one year, all the ornaments were just on the floor because the branches the tree just did this. So with this collection, with this many ornaments, artificial is just the way to go. And this is a really great tree. It has all this open space here. So I can really get in and place these ornaments in here deep down, and then they're still hanging. So they have just kind of that, I don't know, vintage kind of look to all hang so nicely. I mean, you wouldn't want to put this on a tree that is too full, because then you wouldn't be able to kind of see all of this, you know, this kind of dripping effect of the ornaments. And then you can't layer it as well. So this tree allows all this layering. And then this base. So this base I also sell on my website. Sorry, this is becoming an ad for all my products, but I love this tree base. I struggle with what to do underneath the tree. So I normally just put a bunch of gifts, and I always think that looks great, but having this antique style tree base, I just think makes the tree look, I just think it looks really nice. It dresses up the tree. So, and then I've topped the tree with a vintage tree topper. I think it was made in Poland. And then I use these vintage style LED Christmas lights. These don't get hot. My friends at True Tone developed these, and these are just the most amazing thing. Because I used to use all vintage lights, and they were very, very hot and would easily melt this tree. So it's a good invention for those of us who like this vintage look but don't want the danger involved. So I typically, when I decorate the tree with this tree, I typically decorate a section at a time. So my ornaments are all stored by size, but all mixed together. So I don't get all my big ornaments and put the big ornaments out. I get many different sizes of ornaments piled up on the table, and then I decorate a section at a time. And the reason I do that is because I don't have to hunt for an empty space or the perfect spot for an ornament. If I decorate this limb all at once, it's very easy to see, where an ornament needs to be, and then I just move on. And so I kind of do that all the way around the tree and then up. And I find that speeds up my decorating process. I also pre-hang my ornaments. So I have a rack, and I don't have it out, but I have a rack, and what I do is it's just two pieces of wood with some dowel rods across it. And instead of getting an ornament, hanging it, and walking over to the tree and whatever, I pre-hang a bunch of different ornaments on the rack, and then I just bring the rack over to the tree and just hang directly from that. I do the same thing when I undecorate the tree. I hang it all on the rack quickly, and then take the ornaments off and box them. So I find that speeds things up for me. It makes it just, anything to make things go a bit faster or be a bit easier is great when you're decorating for Christmas and putting this many ornaments on the tree. And I don't know how many ornaments are on the tree. Last year I got 1,400 on. I didn't count this year. I might count when I take them off, but I usually am just in too much of a hurry to get them on that I forget to count. And these ornaments, these are probably a range of dates. They're all vintage. They're probably from the early 1900s to about 1960. They range, but I would say the majority of them are probably from around 1950. And they were made all over the world. There were ones made in America, Poland, Italy, Japan, just a wide variety, and I love them all, and I like to mix them all. And something that people ask me is, where do you find such perfect vintage ornaments? My ornaments are, they don't look perfect like yours, and my ornaments don't look perfect. I actually don't like to only use the best examples, because I think mixing in the ones that are less perfect gives more texture. So you don't have this kind of, if you want a perfect ornament, you just go buy a new ornament, right? I don't want perfect new ornaments. I want ornaments that have wear and tear and tell a story and have been used and loved for years. This garland is all made from antique and vintage glass beads. I've rebeaded it, so these are all ones that I've created. And oftentimes when you find these old garlands, they're not in very good condition. You have broken beads or strings, or they just don't look very good. So I take them apart and I make new ones. And I mix these larger beads with the smaller beads. And I like that. I think that really adds a lot. So for a couple of years, people on Instagram have been asking me, where do I buy this decor? Where do I get this? And with the vintage items that I collect, it's, you just have to go out and find them. I mean, I can sell a few here and there, but what I've realized that people struggle with and I have struggled with, is finding an artificial Christmas tree that looks real, that has a really nice shape. So this year I released a line of Christmas trees that I think are realistic, easy to decorate, really show off ornaments and give you that kind of vintage, just cut down from the tree lot feel that is so hard to find. So this is, my dining room is open to my kitchen, so this is the transition into the kitchen. And I've added another garland around this whole opening, and I've layered it with my vintage ornaments. This is the same, I layer it the same way that I do for the garland over the mirror in the dining room and for the tree. Same ornaments in keeping with the theme. And these are just hung on again with ornament hooks. I light this garland. I like to have just a little bit of lights. I don't like to have it, you know, just blinding at night. On the island here, I've just added a little collection of vintage and new nutcrackers. I always like to put them out somewhere. This was a last minute addition last night to the island. The island is hard. There's not a lot of space, and then actually, you know, we use the island, we use the sink, water splashes up, we eat here. So this is not a permanent display. This is just gonna be here for a little bit for fun, and then we'll probably move these guys elsewhere. But they look good here. I think they look fun, kind of standing guard, standing guard over the kitchen. Okay, now we're going into the kitchen. I don't do a lot in the kitchen. There's not a lot of wall space in this kitchen. So, but I do love to add these wreaths to the kitchen doors. I just think that that is a really good way, especially in a smaller kitchen where you don't have a lot of space, to add some holiday cheer to an otherwise kind of blank space. And then I've layered the islands with more garland. Here I've chosen to just use plain vintage ornaments. I like to use these bottle brush trees. These are newer. I have a collection of older ones and newer ones, but I've put these in the kitchen this year. I don't think everything needs to be decorated. I think sometimes they look kind of the decorated and then plain looks nice. I collect these old vintage holiday cards. Some of them were used, some of them were new, but I've hung those underneath the cabinets this year. I just think that that's a fun look. Sometimes I put them in my garlands in the living room. I will clip them in. This year I wanted to do something different, and I thought that they looked really fun here in the kitchen. And then I just add little touches of vintage Christmas in the kitchen. So a little Santa mug picture. And I love these little boots. These are like paper mache Santa boots. So I just baked this cake this morning. No, but I just think that sweets are so nice looking during the holidays. So I love having sweets around all the time. And these were just too irresistible to pass up at the grocery store. So I've added them here for today. And after filming, I'll have to have a little treat. So added another wreath here, just simple, with this red ribbon. And then here we have a kind of like a little bit of a bar shelf, and just little touches of vintage ornaments I've added in here. Little bottle brush trees, nutcracker, nesting doll. I think it's pretty cute. I've put the other ones out as well. Just adding these little bit of touches. You don't have to completely, you know, take this all off and deck it for Christmas, but adding a little bit here and there I think is nice. So I love collecting antiques and old things, and I almost never buy anything new. So I've decorated the house with just things I've found at antique shops or via auctions or estate sales, Facebook Marketplace sometimes. And it's just a collection of things that I love. And I don't know that it's a particular style. I've just tried to pull together things that are interesting to me and try to make them work all together as best as possible. The only thing I won't do for holidays is very minimal, pared down or with no color. But that being said, I really believe that holiday decorating should just be fun and you should just do what you want to do. I do. And you shouldn't try too much to keep up with what everyone else is doing or have everything too classy. I think that that just kind of takes the fun out of things. So I really have rarely seen holiday decor that is just too tacky for me. I love it all. There's nothing that someone could, I mean, maybe there's something that somebody could do that I wouldn't do, but anytime I see one of those houses that's just flashing and covered with things, it makes me feel good to see it. So I don't really have any holiday taboos other than I just personally like a lot of color, a lot of ornaments, a lot of things. So doing a minimal type of holiday would be harder for me to do, for sure. Here we are in the willow room. So I call it the willow room because we've used this wallpaper by Morris & Co. that is called Willow. And so I think that the name is fitting. And this is actually a model of my house that I made. It's not completely finished. I need to add a few details, but this is a model of my home that I've made in the style of the Putz houses that I have on the mantle in the living room. This room is a completely different look than the rest of the house for Christmas. I wanted it to be more of a natural botanic feel, so I've just added some walnuts here to the side. And then these wreaths here, I've just layered with dried oranges that we dried for the holidays. And then this is actually a dried allium from our garden, and I've added dried elements from our garden to the Christmas tree in this room. I always like to add little personal things as we can. And then for the bed, I've put this garland over the bed here. I thought that was really nice. I added some more dried oranges and just a couple of kind of orange velvet ribbons, just to give it a touch of kind of like an old world type of Christmas feel. And then for the bookcase, I've added the same wreaths that I have in other areas of the room, but I've put brown ribbon, and then I've added this garland along the top here with more dried oranges. There's a collection of little Staffordshire figures on top there. I am drawn to red and green just naturally. So most of the home has elements of red and green in every room, just all the time. I'm just always drawn to that. I love gardening, so there's also a lot of botanical elements. So the wallpapers are kind of botanical. A lot of the fabrics are botanical prints. So for the tree in the willow room, I wanted it to be more natural. So I've added dried oranges, and we dried all of these oranges ourselves. I've added the popcorn garland with some dried cranberries. I just love popcorn garland. I think it's so fun. And I think it works pretty much on every style of Christmas tree. And then I have added some vintage plain ornaments to bring in some vintage in here. And then these are actually alliums that I dried from my garden. And I didn't have quite enough to fill in this tree. So I'll dry some more this next year, so that next year I'll have more. But I couldn't resist. I just thought they looked so fun. So I had leftover wallpaper, and so I just wrapped gifts that matched the wallpaper on the walls for this tree. But I think this tree will evolve. This is my first year doing a tree in this room. This is the first year that this room hasn't been a total disaster, and so. But I'm really liking the look of this tree in here. So I think I will just kind of continue to add to this over time and add more dried elements from the garden. And I added these little candles as well. You can see that they were lit. I did light them one time. It was very scary. I wouldn't recommend it, but I had to do it. I had to do it one time, and it was fun but dangerous. So I don't recommend doing that, but I love the look of real candles on a Christmas tree. Just that kind of really old, before there was electricity kind of feel. It's just, I don't know, so romantic, I guess. In this bird cage, I got this bird cage, this vintage bird cage at an estate sale. And I added some limbs and some vintage and antique glass clip-on birds. So these were made to be clipped onto the branches of a Christmas tree. But I couldn't resist putting them in this bird cage. It just seemed fitting. And I just think they're super cute in there. These paintings I got at an auction, and I got them because this guy over here, I just thought he was so interesting looking. I don't know why, I just thought he was so funny looking and so serious and so, I don't know, but he's just hilarious. So I had to have those. And I actually thought I was only going to use them at Halloween because they're kind of scary. But I put them in here and I just thought that they went really well. So They're fun. They just look like caricatures of paintings, but they're old. I mean, I think I'm not exactly sure how old, 1800s, 7, I'm not sure, but they're fun. So yes, I did all the Christmas in here to kind of just go with the theme of this room. And I really think that orange and green go well. I think that that's fun. When you add these dried oranges to a green Christmas tree, it's just a fun look. And I tied some ribbons on. I don't usually do a lot of ribbons on the tree, and the reason why I don't is because the tree that I did before I started decorating with vintage Christmas, I did all ribbons, and this was back in 2016, and I hated it. It was horrible. It was awful. So I've been kind of adverse to using ribbon on trees since, but I did it on this one, and I think it's subtle on this one, and I think it works. So, and then I just like to add other little touches. These are old bottle brush trees. I think that they kind of fit with the theme in here. And then little pine cones mixed in. This is definitely more of a natural theme in this room for Christmas. My love for Christmas all stems from my childhood. I loved Christmas growing up, and I specifically loved the decorations. I just thought that they were just so fun and magical, and I couldn't get enough. I was obsessed with Christmas lights when I was a kid, and thankfully I had grandparents that kind of indulged that obsession. And one year my grandmother and I just got every single strand of lights that she had ever had, and we just stapled them everywhere, and we just had the most fun. So I mean, my love of Christmas comes from just trying to recreate that feeling that I had when I was a child of just, you know, all that kind of wonder and excitement. And so I definitely decorate differently than the way my family did, but I think that there's elements that I bring in. My grandmother on my dad's side, she always had a strand of lights, I mean, just everywhere, like in every garland. So I try to light most of the garlands if possible. And I had two sets of grandparents on both sides who were very into Christmas decorating and making the holidays just super special for their grandchildren. And so that's where a lot of it comes from, just trying to keep that feeling going. And yeah, so that's why I do it.
Thanks for watching. Go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content and shopping guides.